this metagame, there's been a big regression in the number of wastelands that people are showing up to. So that's enemy number 1 for Cloud Post. For those of you not familiar with this deck, the combination of Cloud Post, Glimmer Post, and Vesuva sets up a base to make a lot of colorless mana. You have cards like Crop Rotation and like Expedition Map to help facilitate that as well. That allows you to go hard cast Eldrazi's.
Right. Now, unfortunately for him, while Wasteland is down in the format, Steven Mann didn't get the memo on that. He's running Temur Delver. This is the Daze Wasteland Stifle deck you're used to seeing, and what I'd have to think is a hostile matchup for Blue-Green Cloud Post.
You usually see Pithing Needles in the main deck of Blue-Green Cloud Post. That is just for Wasteland. Now, Pithing Needle has utility all over the place, but the reason it's justified in the deck is because of Wasteland.
All right, well, game is underway. Jeremy starts on a tropical island. Steven does have the turn 1 Delver of Secrets. And it's going to be a Brainstorm from Jeremy. Maybe trying to bait out a Daze. We'll see here. Steven lets it resolve.
So I'm a big fan of Cloud Post right now with fewer and fewer Wastelands floating around, but this is not the matchup that Jeremy wants, as you mentioned.
Yeah, if you don't pile Legacy too much, but you do play Modern, you've seen Cloud Post a banned card in Modern. It's very similar to the Urzatron lands in how this strategy plays out. It's this deck that makes a lot of colorless mana. It's really hard for a blue control deck to deal with because it eventually has uncounterable spells. All that soft permission, those spell pierces are pretty laughable in the matchup.
But unlike assembling Tron, which is ABC, all Cloud Post really cares about is getting A, and then anything else is fine.
Yeah, the Brainstorm resolves. Jeremy makes a Expedition Map with his second play. Steven lets it all resolve, does not flip his Delver, swings in for 1. Jeremy back down to 20. That card there was Glimmer Post for the turn. Not the namesake Cloud Post, but it does power it up.
And with an Expedition Map, Jeremy then go find one of his Cloud Posts and really get something going.
All right, well, the hand is tipped here for Mann. It's going to be a Nimble Mongoose and a Fetch Land. Jeremy untapping on. He's debating on upkeep whether or not he wants to crack the map. There is an issue that Stifle really gets the map, and I think that's what's going to happen out of Mann.
Jeremy trying to assemble his own shuffle here with Brainstorm, but Steven's going to cut that off right away. Do not want this deck to get its mana online because it's very powerful when it has all of its mana and doesn't really do much of anything until that happens.
And it's a good point. This is, he is trying to assemble a shuffle here. Remember, he Brainstormed last turn. Put 2 cards back on top. Doesn't really want to draw either of them, but now he may have to draw them both. Man does have the Stifle.
Now, Stifle is not at its best against this deck. There's not that many fetch lands, but getting an Expedition Map is awesome. It's a lot of time from Jeremy. It's 3 mana total, spaced over 2 turns, and it acts as another land destruction effect.
Yeah, well, once Jeremy has a Cloud Post in play, you see he has another Glimmer Post in his hand. What's going to happen here is those cards like Daze and maybe Spell Pierce that you see out of Steven's deck, they really stop doing anything. So by keeping Jeremy off all his copies of Cloud Post, Steven allows his deck to work as intended.
And I think right now they're just trying to make sure that Jeremy has not drawn before the map got blown up.
Yeah, you can get that. A simple count of cards will figure that one out. Second Glimmer Post from Jeremy, that will gain him 2 life, but he's still just playing 1 mana a turn. Steven managing to keep the Cloud Post deck fair.
Until there's a Cloud Post involved here, it's really hard for Jeremy to do much of anything. Now, the big cheat here, 3 copies of Show and Tell in Jeremy's main deck. That's a way of sneaking something into play without having to get a boatload of mana. It's definitely the backup plan for this deck. It would prefer to just try to win through generating a bunch of mana, using Ivugan, getting Emrakul. That's easy mode, but he might have to roll the dice and try to go for Show and Tell here because Steven is doing such an effective job of keeping him off of his mana.
Yeah. Turn 3 here, Steven's going to start on a Ponder. His Delver Secrets did flip this turn. Graveyard is starting to pile up for Nimble Mongoose. And this is what Temur does. It gets a couple creatures down, and then while it continues to disrupt his opponent, its creatures change from 1/1s into really potent threats.
Steven does not like what he sees there. Has an option with the fetch land in hand of just taking one of those cards, looking at 2 lands and a Force of Will off of that Ponder and puts it all away.
It doesn't want any of the 3.
Yeah, it looks like he already has Force of Will plus blue cards. So the Force of Will is not worth very much in that hand, and the 2 lands are not something that Steven's interested in either.
And it's going to be a Gitaxian Probe for Mann. He'll get to see what he's up against. It's Cavern of Souls, Vesuva, a third Glimmer Post, a Tropical Island, and a Show and Tell. This is a hand that really wanted to get that Expedition map into Cloud Post.
Now, there's a lot of time in this hand because the Glimmer Post plus the Vesuva represents a lot of life gain, but there's nothing going on with this hand, and Steven already has Force of Will plus blue card to check the Show and Tell in the event that Jeremy is able to draw one of his Eldrazi or Primeval Titan.
Yeah, Spell Pierce to deal with Show and Tell as well if Jeremy tries it in the next turn. And 4 more damage coming in, Jeremy down to 18. Swinging, so Jeremy down to 18, and we go back to his turn. It's a third Glimmer Post. That gains him 3 life. So like you said, he is treading water with this life gain off Glimmer Posts.
He's getting hit for 4 a turn right now, and, you know, he's got a little bit of time. He's still at 21.
Yeah.
The problem is going to be beating this Force of Will.
Well, the thing is that even if he gets up to 6 mana, there aren't a lot of Windmill Slam cards that the Cloud Post deck has.
It's basically just Primeval Titan. That's the big one.
And just single green right now for Jeremy. He can, of course, Vesuva the Tropical Island if he wants to try to hard cast a Primeval Titan.
I would have to imagine the priority here for Jeremy is to try to Vesuva the Glimmer Post.
Just stay alive and then hope go from there.
Yep.
We do see Steven, and he recognizes this Burn's pretty dead here. He's just going to send all of it upstairs. That is cards numbers 6 and 7 for his graveyard. So 5 damage to the dome to Jeremy, sends him to 16, and now 6 more on the attack, puts him to 10. And Steven getting aggressive in a hurry. Sitting back behind Spell Pierce, Force of Will, Stifle.
It's a problem, you know, for decks like Cloud Post is when you're trying to mix and match, Temur Delver is so punishing.
Yeah, Bazooka Bog. This is a main deck one of.
Okay.
For Jeremy. It exiles Steven's graveyard. That'll actually be pretty strong here. It'll shrink the Nimble Mongoose down. And Steven, he'll use his Stifle on the Bazooka Bog.
It's good enough. I mean, it slows down his clock quite a bit. It goes from 6 points a turn to 4 points a turn. That's 2 turns versus 3 turns. Probably good enough for a Stifle, especially with Force of Will plus blue cards still in hand.
Next attack from Steven puts Jeremy down to 4. Jeremy has the draw here. He's going to need something good to stay alive. We know his Vesuva will gain him 4 life. That's 1 turn. But unlike sometimes, there's not a heavy sweeper in this deck. There's no Oblivion Stone, all is dust sort of card.
Yeah, nothing of the sort in here.
So he'll cast Brainstorm. Is that good enough to get the counterspell from Steven's hand? He's thinking pretty hard on it. It's possible it is.
Because he knows that Jeremy's hand is really bad right now, and Brainstorm into 3 cards that matter may mean that the Force of Will is not enough for Steven to protect himself from whatever happens. It's worth a consideration.
The worst thing that could happen for Jeremy would be if he Force of Will it, if Jeremy then plays Blue Source, casts Show and Tell, and puts a Primeval Titan into play. That would be disastrous for Steven. I think because he knows Jeremy has the Vesuva and isn't actually dead next turn, that's the reason why he's going to let this happen.
Yeah. Sometimes these decks play Moment's Peace as well, which is not a card you want to allow Jeremy to find.
Yeah, none of them in the main deck at least.
Some in the sideboard.
Garfinkel.
I have occasionally seen the card crop up in people's main decks.
Yeah. The Cloud Post deck is very powerful. It does have a downside that I know you use this term a lot, there's a lot of air in the deck. There's a couple cards that really matter and a lot of cards that are just kind of setting up.
Yep. Air, sometimes I refer to it as nonsense. It's all the same idea.
It is not, the threat density is low.
That's the polite way of putting it.
Expedition map the play for Jeremy. Right now, he is dead on board. 6 damage on the table for Steven.
Though both players know, not dead just yet, because he can copy that land.
He's going to go ahead and sack the Expedition map immediately here, as it did resolve. Could get a copy of Glimmer Post, could get a Cloud Post. Also has couple bullets in his
Is that a
board here.
glacial
It looks
chasm?
like it's a glacial chasm that he got.
Okay. That's a lot of time.
And that's going to cost him his land, so it's going to be hard for him to bridge to the end game with that one, but it will buy him some time. You see here, when he enters the battlefield, he'll have to sack that Bazooka Bog. For 2 turns, he will not be attackable.
Well, possibly greater than that, because keep in mind he still has access to his Vesuva, which can copy a Glimmer Post.
Yeah.
So he can play the cumulative upkeep potentially for quite a few turns.
And maybe if you're Steven, you're wondering, this is problematic. Maybe you're supposed to Force of Will that Expedition map, or at the very least just Spell Pierce it.
The problem is that he knows that he's facing, maybe he doesn't know the Glacial Chasm's in the list, but he knows that there's a Show and Tell in hand, and he's not killing Jeremy next turn regardless because there's still a copy of the Glimmer Post. So if you pick a fight over Expedition map and then Show and Tell resolves and he gains 4 or 5 life, then you're definitely out of the game. So I think Steven taking a slightly more conservative route here, but I think it's justified.
Yeah, if Jeremy gets a Titan in play, this match breaks open really quickly.
Also, while this is going on, Steven is still drawing to Wasteland. That's a game win at any point.
Ponder for Jeremy. Steven lets it resolve. Looks like a fair number of lands in here. We'll see what Jeremy wants to do with it. He did pay 2 life for the Glacial Chasm this turn, so he gets 1 more turn after this to stabilize. Maybe more. You said he does have that Vesuva. Maybe he can find some more Glimmer Posts.
If he starts chaining it together, he can gain a lot of life off these lands.
Yeah, now remember, cumulative upkeep means that this Glacial Chasm becomes pretty expensive.
Not exactly Magic's most beloved mechanic. Your thing
eventually your thing gets you.
Your thing eventually dies as you excruciatingly have to pay more and more of a resource that you're running out of. Not super fun.
It's one of those, it's got a lot of downside to the mechanic, you could say.
That's another polite way of putting it.
Yeah. The first time's mechanics says upside mechanics, and
right.
That's not really.
Your thing eventually dies. Your thing kills you. You had to pay for your thing twice. Historically, not Magic's most beloved mechanics.
I love Lord of the Pit. It makes so much sense.
Lord of the Pit is super sweet and flavorful, but Echo, for example, that just feels like...
I mean, I loved it when I was learning to play, when I would draw a card and then be informed that all my stuff was dead because I drew my card. That was a ton of fun.
Huge drawbacks on things can be really flavorful, but small drawbacks are excruciating.
Yeah, I certainly never felt like I was bad at the game when my things would just randomly die.
And this is another reason why Steven elected not to...
There we go.
Not to fight over that Expedition map because Wasteland was still a draw.
Candelabra Taunos in play. That was the play for Jeremy, but Wasteland will take care of Glacial Chasm, and going to take care of all the rest of Jeremy's permanents as he's scooping them up into the deck for game 2.
Yep, and I really like the way that Steven navigated those couple turns. There's some scary stuff going on, even though it looked like Jeremy was just dead the whole way through. Steven respected the fact that at a moment's notice, Jeremy could resolve something big and didn't pick fights over small things.
So we're going to go to the sideboard here, first looking at Blue-Green Cloud Post. This is a tough matchup for him, or at least from the looks of game 1. Steven has a lot of tools between Stifles for Expedition maps, Dazes, Wastelands. There's a lot of things he can do to really sneak under the Cloud Post deck. What does Cloud Post do to fight back?
So he's got a lot of good cards in the matchup. He's also got a lot of funny cards. So there's 2 copies of Chalice of the Void. That seems pretty solid here. He can't rip it off on the first turn off of Ancient Tombs, but setting a Chalice on 1, even if it takes him a little bit of while, is still going to be pretty powerful. I like the 2 copies of Elephant Grass here. That's a lot of mana for Steven to pay, which his deck doesn't really have that much mana. 2 copies of Moment's Peace. Those are very nice here. A copy of Relic of Progenitus alongside the Bazooka Bog can pin the graveyard that Steven relies on for Tarmogoyf and Nimble Mongoose. 2 copies of Flusterstorm strikes me as a little narrow, and I don't think Jeremy really wants to fight over the spells. And 2 copies...
This is a great one. Which, if you don't know the card yet, this is Teferi's Response.
So if we back up to a couple of years ago, R&T sort of admitted there was an issue with Lingering Souls. They were worried about how powerful the card was, its potential to be all over the place in Standard. And so you saw this, these Thundermont Hellkites, these Legion Loyalists, these less than elegant designs.
Cards that kind of said, I'm really good against Lingering Souls.
Less than elegant designs come through the pipe board to make sure players had enough tools to fight over Lingering Souls. Now, if you go back even further, the first card that really got this treatment was Rashad Import. Rashad Import, I think, was a big overshoot R&D's end, to a lesser extent Dust Bowl. players didn't really, I don't know if R&D really appreciated how powerful the card was. And so in the following block in Invasion, Sabo's Web and Teferi's Response.
These were the things they were going to get RichadenPort out of these decks.
Teferi's counter target spell or ability an opponent controls that targets a land you control. If a permanent's ability is countered this way, destroy that permanent. So if someone...
And then draw 2 cards.
And just randomly draw 2 cards tapped on there for good measure. So if someone ports you, you blow it up, you draw 2 cards.
Okay. So you say upkeep port me, and I'm like, wait, hold on. You did something that targeted my land. Hold on. I Teferi's Response to my land. Not only do you not get to tap that land, but I blow up your RichadenPort, and then I draw 2 cards.
Correct.
That's like a 4-for-1. Yeah.
This could also come in against Wasteland because it works the same way. You don't get the upside of blowing up the Wasteland because, whatever. But
yeah.
I guess this comes in. I don't know. Well,
it's got to. I think this is the deck that messes with your lands.
For the parts of the player community that kind of made fun of R&D a little bit for all the ham-fisted anti-lingering souls designs that came through down the pipeline for a couple years, they got nothing on Teferi's Response. This card is a mess.
It's I mean, if you're not playing Ports, I can't even cast it.
Really exciting rare to open if you're a casual player. This is
like, wait, what am I?
Really fun.
I will say, if you ever play Mental Magic, this card is a house in Mental Magic.
I believe it, because it comes up 1 in 10,000 times, and when it comes up, it's insane.
Sometimes someone tries to stone run you, and you're just like, oh, I'm going to 4-for-1 you now.
Yeah. So there you go. There is Teferi's Response. Not the highlight of Magic design.
A beautiful answer to a problematic card.
That is a smooth design.
All right. Well, game 2, Garfinkel on the play. We're keeping 7s both sides. He's going to start with a turn 1 Pithing Needle. It's going to be blind.
That's a slightly more elegant solution to Wasteland along with other permanents.
Hapsuma's naming Wasteland. Yeah. Does it ever... All right, here's a question. If you knew your opponent had a fetch land in hand, and you could just guarantee name the fetch land in their hand, you'd still needle the Wasteland, wouldn't you?
This is the moment I remember watching 12 Posts. Ben Lundquist, a buddy of mine, was playing against it on camera, was playing Merfolk. Ben went turn 1 Island, Aether Vial. Opponent went turn 1 Pithing Needle, Wasteland, and the 12 Post player won easily.
Second Pithing Needle looks like thrown down.
I believe it's an expedition map.
An expedition map. Well, and more importantly, a Cloud Post to play for the turn here for Jeremy. So now his engine's going to be online. He could have a second Cloud Post as early as next turn. These Cloud Posts are safe from Wasteland. We're going to see a lot of mana getting churned out on Jeremy's side.
Yep. Assuming this map actually gets to do its thing.
Yeah, as we saw last game, it can get stifled. There is a Stifle in Steven's hand. Jeremy doesn't really have a way to play around Stifle. In a lot of ways, it seems like he just has to kind of rush right into one.
Yep. I mean, he can, hope that Steven plays inefficiently with his mana a little bit, but it sort of is what it is. He's got to... It's going to be easy for Steven to apply pressure while leaving mana up, so to some extent, these Stifles are just going to happen, and it's going to stink a little bit for Jeremy when it comes up.
Draw for the turn there from Garfinkel. The play from Steven was a fetch land and a Delver of Secrets, getting his clock on the board. Misty Rainforest, the land for Jeremy. Copy of Show and Tell in his hand, but not under too much pressure right now. He'll just pass. I like this. He gets to end step the expedition map, which means Steven has to leave mana up again.
He can also try to go for the Misty Rainforest right now, and if Steven decides to stifle it, then you have a window for your expedition map. If Steven does nothing, you still aren't obligated to sack the expedition map. You can simply untap and draw again. It looks like Jeremy doesn't want to make a move, but there was a little finagling to be done there if he was feeling so inclined.
Interesting line here from Steven. He knew his top card there, so it was a Volcanic Island. He fetched for it, and this time he does hit off the Delver. So it will be a 3-2 as he draws a Daze. A lot of good answers, however, in man's hand. He has Daze, Spell Pierce, and Stifle.
The only thing that's really weak right now... Ooh, a Repeal.
This is a card... I love this card right now in Legacy, especially as Delver's gotten more popular. Repeal, Blue X, bounce a permanent, non-land permanent with converted mana cost X, draw a card against a flipped Delver. This is unsummon draw a card.
Well, Steven rather could pick a fight here if he wanted to. Because he has Stifle in hand, he could Spell Pierce and then stifle the fetch land, but it looks like he's got other plans.
Yeah, and I don't even think he wants to stifle the fetch land because it's probably just reserved for the Expedition map.
Yeah. The only thing that Steven's hand is really liable to be beaten by is Jeremy just making Cloud Post land drops.
Yeah, if he draws a Cloud Post, that's really bad for Steven.
Because the Stifles, the soft permission, they're going to keep Jeremy off of spells or permanents that allow him to get these lands into play. But if Jeremy just starts making his land drops, he's got the needle set to Wasteland, he's good to go.
Yeah, even one Cloud Post will make the Daze and Spell Pierce in Steven's hand very difficult to have do anything. We're back. Steven let his Delver get bounced, just recast it, made a third land, and said go. Keeping some pressure on the board at all times, but nothing too aggressive. It's just been one creature.
And there's the start of the trouble here.
Cloud Post 2 from Jeremy.
Steven has given up a lot of tempo in this game to make sure that the Expedition map can't be... He's used a lot of his equity in this game trying to make sure that Expedition map does not get cracked. He's given up a lot of tempo to keep up that 1 mana. He passed on casting a Tarmogoyf. And now with Jeremy just starting to make some land drops here, he might be in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, Steven flips his Delver off Spell Pierce. He doesn't actually want to draw it, so he's going to go ahead and crack his fetch land here. And Jeremy figures this is as good as time as any to go for the Expedition map. Eventually, it doesn't seem like Steven's ever going to tap down on lands.
Yeah, if Steven passes again, that's not a bad spot to go for it. Though it's worth noting, if Jeremy has nothing else to do with his mana, then why not,
Yeah.
Why not just let him hold it up the whole game?
It's going to get the Stifle, and that'll work. Now Steven gets to go search for a land. That was the crack of Wooded Foothills resolving. Steven with a second tropical island. His hand, 2 Spell Pierce, 1 Tarmogoyf, a Daze, some with soft permission. Not the best. He'll use Jataxian Probe. The life points are pretty free in this matchup, but now he has to see what he's up against. It's a show and tell, a crop rotation, another crop rotation, and what appears to be a Caracas.
Yeah, this is another kind of dead-end hand. It does allow him to try to crop rotate for Glacial Chasm somewhere down the line to buy a little bit of time. The show and tell is threatening in the abstract, though there's nothing to go with it right now.
And now there's the chance here. He could just crop, once he untaps with a lot of mana, he could just start crop rotating into the lands he needs, right? Another Cloud Post. All of a sudden he has 9 mana. He could crop rotate into Eye of Ugin if he needed to. There are options here.
But with Jeremy already a little light on mana, the crop rotations getting countered is something he has to really worry about because the sacrifice is part of the cost. So if those start getting tagged with counter spells, it's a lot of trouble for Jeremy.
Yeah, if the first crop rotation goes and gets a Cloud Post, he'll have enough mana to fight through any soft permission. He'll have 9 with the 3 Cloud Posts, but that's to dodge Force of Will, for example.
Yeah.
It would be a big risk on Jeremy's part. So we saw Caracas in his hand as a utility land. We saw Bazooka Bog and Glacial Chasm last game. Are there any other one-ofs that he can go to find?
Well, he has the Eye of Ugin, but that requires a lot of mana. He's got a Cavern of Souls, but I would imagine that's only coming up if he has a Primeval Titan. And then past that, he's got a Tabernacle, which wouldn't be too bad here, but not something good enough to crop rotate for with Steven with 3 mana in play.
Yeah, Steven can just pay for the creatures. Would be taxing on Steven's mana, but Steven's not been using his mana every turn anyway.
Yeah, this is the last shot for Jeremy to push something through big with ease. After this, when Steven untaps, I don't think you're going to see him add a ton to his board. He's just going to be holding up a wall of counterspells.
Yeah, he already has a 3-turn clock going. Tarmogoyf has instant, sorcery, land, artifact. No creature just yet. And from Jeremy's going to make Caracas, and we'll see crop rotation. He's going to float a mana before he sacks this Caracas.
Yeah, he wants to get rid of the Caracas because he needs the tropical islands here to cast a Primeval Titan potentially, or just chain together 2 green and or blue spells over the course of a turn. and there's no Caracas targets in Steven's deck, so it's a freebie.
This line was what I was mentioning here. He's going to get a Cloud Post here, so now the 2 Cloud Posts in play power up for 6 colorless. If he wants to do another crop rotation, that will play through a Spell Pierce, and a Daze even. He could just pay for all of them. But the play looks to be another Pithing Needle.
And it wouldn't surprise me if this one went on Wasteland too, just as insurance.
Aren't many targets in the deck.
Yep. Can't really snap off his Wooded Foothills at this point. We will get confirmation momentarily, yeah. But I suspect it's just going on Wasteland again.
It would just be that or a fetch land. Yeah, 2 of them on Wasteland just in case Steven's going to blow them up. To be fair, the way he blows them up is Ancient Grudge, so that would get both of them.
Sometimes these decks have different pieces of artifact removal.
Yeah, no, there can be a lot of them. In Steven's case, it's Ancient Grudge.
Yeah.
So if he gets his artifact removal, he's got them both. But also Steven doesn't have a Wasteland yet, which kind of shows just how problematic the card is for Cloud Post.
Well, when you're in the business of crop rotating for Cloud Post, you cannot afford to get hit with Wasteland.
Swing with the 2 creatures puts Jeremy down to 9. It's 7 damage here. If Steven can find just a couple more points of power, he can present lethal next turn.
Keep in mind, Steven's still aware of the second crop rotation in Jeremy's hand, which can get a Glacial Chasm. So just Steven has to be aware of that line of play.
Yeah, if Jeremy wants to get Chasm, he's going to have to do it soon. He doesn't want to go to 2 on a swing before he gets Glacial Chasm.
I think if that line of play comes up, you're going to see it, basically this coming turn.
Right. I'll go back over to Steven. He's going to crack a fetch. Does he present another threat here? He has a lot of soft permission, but he knows that with 3 Cloud Posts, that's not going to do too much.
Well, he may want to I think he has a Sulfuric Vortex, which is not bad to cast here as it cuts off the Glimmer Posts from coming up.
Yeah, so Sulfuric Vortex cuts off Glimmer Posts.
If something weird happens to his creatures, if he starts getting hit with Moment's Peace, Vortex is still kicking along. So I like adding this to the table at this point.
Yeah, no more life gain on Jeremy's side. Glacial Chasm still works here. You don't take damage. Jeremy will go down to 7 on upkeep, though. That is the burn spell, which means Steven's attack is lethal next turn.
So if Jeremy does not find anything of note, he is forced to go get Glacial Chasm. He can't go get a post at this point. He's still also got that show and tell. Maybe he can snap that off if he draws something big.
Yeah, we'll see what he can go for here. We have not seen a Primeval Titan from him yet. He has 11 mana at the moment, not too far away from just being able to cast Emrakul. If he had actually a Glimmer Post on Emrakul, he could just make Emrakul this turn.
Fun for the whole family.
Love this. 6 lands, make Emrakul. Yeah, that's okay.
That is what's fun about the Cloud Post deck is they're always a draw step away from suddenly having something like Emrakul hard cast, untapped, and attacking.
For the record, the first Modern Pro Tour, for those of you who want some history of the Cloud Post deck, it was the only Modern Pro Tour where Cloud Post was legal. While only 1 copy made top 8, I would say it was responsible for there being no control decks in the format.
That first Modern Pro Tour was pretty fun because there were some bannings, and it was just one of those, all right, well, let's see what happens with some relatively light bannings. And the answer was complete and total chaos.
Everybody was comboing each other turn 3, all over the place.
At best. I mean, that's a drawn out game.
The good deck in the format was doing it on turn 2. That was, the Blazing Shoal deck that we saw at the tournament. And yeah, you can't play control when people can do what Jeremy's doing here. It's very hard to build a blue deck that can deal with a bunch of Cloud Posts into Primeval Titans. And at that point, I think they were even casting Green Sun Zenith with just Primeval Titan. You just had 8 in the deck.
Yep. a hard cast Emrakul, traditionally hard on blue-based strategies, many other strategies as well.
Well, it's not like it took them a while to get there either.
Yeah.
It was turn 6. You could find one and cast it. Glacial Chasm has been gotten by Jeremy. So he is now, you see this a lot of times when things get really bad for a Cloud Post deck. Their last line of defense is the Glacial Chasm. They try to set up they basically have until this card dies to go make Emrakul.
And it's this interesting thing where, you know, hypothetically, the Sulfuric Vortex can now race Steven, but now that the Vortex is shutting off life gain, there's no way for Jeremy to get out in front of the damage race that the Vortex is presenting.
Jeremy pays 2 for the Sulfuric Vortex, for the Glacial Chasm, not taking damage off Vortex. He can pay 1 more cumulative upkeep. After that, he's going to have to make Emrakul, but you're right, even then, he has to find a way to deal with the Sulfuric Vortex damage. Which there isn't, one of the neat parts about Vortex is there isn't really a way to deal with it. You can't gain life through it. I mean, you have to blow it up.
Well, it's arguable if that's neat or not. It's a feature.
Show and Tell and Crop Rotation in Jeremy's hand. He's going to go for a Crop Rotation here. Now he has to decide what he's going to get. It's going to resolve. Steven has a lot of spells here, but I don't believe any of them are hard counters. Yeah, Spell Pierce stays. 9 colorless sitting here for Jeremy. I suppose if you're Steven, you could toss a bunch of counter magic into it, thinking, hey, if Jeremy's going to get Eye of Ugin, I'm going to make sure he can't activate it.
Yeah.
I'll just make you tap enough Cloud Posts. Jeremy does get Eye of Ugin.
So he's got 9 mana left over here, which is enough to activate, but still not enough to cast next turn without the assistance of another land.
Yeah, so Emrakul's discounted to 13 from this. Discounted, in parentheses. The lands can only tap for 12, even if Jeremy draws a post. So it seems like he's 1 short right now, but he may have a trick up his sleeve. If he has a Candelabra of Taunos in his hand, for example, he has a ton of mana available.
Yeah. And all of this is still, you know, if Steven even has something as trivial as a Stifle, this may not work.
Stifle will stop it. The neat part about Candelabra with Cloud Post is if he doesn't have, just Steven doesn't have the Stifle, Jeremy can probably play Candelabra and make Emrakul through all of these Spell Pierces and Dazes too.
Yeah, at this point, Steven's just saying, all right, well, there's not a lot I can do here. I'm going to pass the turn back to you. You're going to go to 1, and then, you know, they do something or you can't. And it looks like he's tapping.
Yeah, Jeremy pays for the Glacial Chasm.
Yeah, I just don't.
Doesn't have a way to do it. So that'll be Steven Mann 2-0. With that victory, it puts him into the top 8. And as has been the theme this weekend, the people, both Steven Mann and Brad Nelson, doing their best to secure a spot in the Players' Championship, each of them top 8ing and open, will be a great service to them.